A new advocacy group highlighting Latino issues has established roots in southern Minnesota.
HACER is located in the new Emmy Frentz Shared Spaces building in Mankato. The goal of the organization is to learn about the needs of the Latino community in order to educate people about issues that the communities face and also advocate for equitable change. HACER decided to establish an office in Mankato because they noticed that southern Minnesota has the second highest concentration of Latinos in the state.
The needs are there, and that we want to know more about those needs and how we can support in finding solutions to or responses to those needs coming out from the community.
Having a branch in Mankato allows the group to better serve the Latino community in southern Minnesota, who can face different problems than the community in the Twin Cities where HACER is based.
And the only way that we can be inclusive is by being listening and also by being speaking out. There is no way to support anyone and do better if we don't know what we really need.
HACER says that they look forward to working with individuals and organizations in the area. For more information or how to contact them, visit KEYC.com.